Hello, everyone. Hello, astrology lovers. Hello, Susan.
Hi.
We're missing Tanya this particular month, but we hope she'll be back with us next month. She's got a whole lot of stuff going on. So she plans on being back with us next month when we're doing August. We opened this month, and let me share my screen here so we can at least look at the first day of August. Now, obviously, when we open, one of the routines that we always do is choose words or phrases that actually give us a bit of an overview for the upcoming month. So, Susan, for the month of August, what's your words?
I have the phrase, I feel that we're of two minds this month because we start off our month, we've got that fire and air polarity from the full moon in Aquarius. We've also got the fire and air from the recent change of our nodes to Aries and Libra. And we're in the midst of summer, and we're still doing all our vacationing and everything like that. But then by the end of the month, we move into the Virgo energy, which is, we become more organized and we're wanting to get things done. And by the end of the month, we have 5 planets that are in earth elements, and we end up with a full moon that's earth and water. So we've totally flipped from fire, air to earth and water. So, I can definitely say us having 2 different mindsets throughout the month.
Yes. Yeah, I can certainly see where you're coming in with that. For me, it's kind of almost a bit of the same thing. My phrase is let's redo. And so when we look right here on the screen, we've got the chart of the August 1st, and we see that the full moon, we open right on August 1st with that full moon. And for those of you who are new to astrology, the way we see a full moon is when we have the sun and the moon is completely opposite to it. The moon itself holds no light. It is always a reflection directly from the sun. So when you look up there into the sky and you see the moon, that light is not coming from the moon. The light is coming from the sun that is reflecting on it. I think it's very interesting times with the opening of August. If you watched our last video talking about July, one of the things you would have heard us talk about is the 23rd of July, we're going to have a Venus retrograde. So this means entirely that the Venus retrograde is certainly going to take us all the way through August. Now, Venus is interesting in Leo. For those of you who are Leos, you know that Leo is all about love, wanting the love, feeling the love, the necessity of love. It's also very creative as well. And, it's a bit dramatic. And so Venus in Leo, when Venus is going straight forward, Venus is about love, Venus is about opening the doors, Venus is about value, Venus is about looking at things and smiling and lovingly looking at it. And when Venus retrogrades, Venus asks us to redo things, re-look at some of those things we did love, re-look at some of the people we talked about re-loving. And so in the transit of Venus, Venus went all the way up to 28 degrees. Then it hit a wall on that 23rd of July. Venus is coming all the way back to 12 degrees. And that actually was where we were about mid-June this year. So some of the pacts we signed, some of the agreements we signed, some of the treaties we signed, some of the things we would jump on board of to say, oh, I'm going to really love to do that. That sounds like a great idea. We're going to rethink about that. And when Venus turns around in September, which obviously we'll talk about it next month. Then we're coming back again with a plan of action. And earlier today, I was thinking, how can I sort of explain this? It kind of reminds me when you're watching a YouTube video and you go through and you hit a point, maybe it's about a recipe. You hit a point and you go, like, was that 2 tablespoons or 2 teaspoons? And so you hit and you go back over. This is what we're doing right now. We're going back over. We're re-seeing every single thing we saw the first time around. And then in September, we're going to see that we're going to move it through. We're going to see it again. But this Venus retrograde is actually having us re-see it through a different set of eyes. Now, when we look on the chart, we can see that this Venus is at 26 degrees. And this is connecting to the nodal axis. So we always know that the North Node and the South Node oppose each other. But this Venus retrograde that's happening right now is connecting with the North Node. What is it that I need to do in order to make my way forward? Venus pulling into that connection with Aries. Aries is the first one out of the gate. Aries is the leader of the pack. Aries is the movement forward. So Venus going back and reminding us about everything since that middle part of June, we may be thinking, oh, why did I sign up for that? That's perhaps not entirely what I actually want to do. If I'm going to be the leader of the pack and the person ahead of the gate, that actually means I have to let some things go in life. And we also see that Venus at 26 degrees Leo is connecting to the South Node at 28 degrees Leo. In astrology, we call that a sextile, fire and air. So it's a sextile. We like sextiles. But South Node in Libra is also about having to come into some type of a sense of balance and harmony. And so that Venus retrograde is going to have us doing a fair amount of thinking throughout all of that. Also, I'm going to take us back to the people who were born roughly around 2007, 2006, 2007, 2008. If you looked at your natal chart, you would see you have Saturn in the sign of Leo. So one of the things you're going to be re-asking about is, I didn't think the agreement to that amount of responsibility was really going to create the issue that I seem to be running into. So how can I reframe that? And how can I look at my way of shifting and changing? When we did our July forecast, we also talked about the nodal change, the North Node and the South Node. You know, this was in this exact same place in the years 2004, 2005, 2006. So we are actually all revisiting a bit of that. We're revisiting again the release, the let go of some partnerships, some people, places, things in our life in order that you can do that movement forward. The other thing that's really interesting here on the first day of August, let's roll it back to the solar eclipse that took place earlier this year on the 20th of April. There was a solar eclipse, and that particular solar eclipse sat right at 29 degrees Aries. If you've been following me for a while, you've heard me talk about eclipses. And I've often talked about the fact of, so on that 20th of April, am I expecting anything to happen? Boom, right then? No, highly unlikely. But the eclipse sets up a vibrational pattern in the sky, and that is really highly, massively vibrating. So when you have planets or points going through that high vibration, they pick up that high vibration as well. Solar eclipses from the 20th of April blew open a doorway. You may not have seen it at that point in time. Very late part of July and the very early part of August. Pay attention. That door blew open, as we said, that door blew open somewhere around that later part of April. This is the realization of it now coming into play. Can you relate at all to that, Susan? Is there anything that brings to mind for you?
I'm not sure, but I have to say, in looking at this and looking at my own chart, the 26 degrees of Venus is sitting right on my Pluto and my Jupiter in my third house. So, you know, I know that a lot to do with my siblings and my family and stuff, which is what my summer is about, I think.
Third house, right? That's how you come up with that third house.
Yeah. So it's a lot to do with communication and with my siblings, with short distance travel and stuff. And so it's interesting. And then also, you know, with the Aries, yeah. So it's new, a lot of new things going to be happening, I think. So I'm looking forward to see what is going to happen at the end of July. You know, we're not there yet, so it'll be interesting. And the node also, well, it brings up the south node sitting on my Neptune, so that's you know, opens me up to more spirituality, I think, as well. And yeah, it's just.
And the remembrance of past lifetimes. When I did a reading with someone this morning before coming online here, and one of the things I talked about with South Node is that, you know, first of all, I don't particularly like South Node quite often. South Node can, not always, but it can bring in a bit of a sense of grief.
Yeah.
But it also brings us into the connection of past lifetimes.
Yeah.
So just like you were saying, it brings up a lot of the memories of past lifetimes, and the memories sometimes about what I used to do in past lifetimes.
Well, when you mentioned 2004, it's actually, that's right after I retired. And so I was beginning that whole, you know, next part of my life. What am I going to do? You know, and I was able to get interested in things that I didn't have time to do when I was working. So it really did open up a lot of things at that time as well. So it's interesting. The cycles are always interesting. So.
Yes, the complete cycles of everything. And of course, we start in August with Mercury in Mercury in Virgo, which is very, very, very strong because Mercury rules Virgo. We've got the sun in Leo. That's very, very strong because the sun rules Leo. So it also brings a bit of that other vision and almost a bit of a split there, because Mercury in Virgo says you got to work hard, you got to have that attention to detail, you have to have that working hard process, where the sun in Leo says, but I want to play, like I want to have a good time, I want to play. So we open August with a bit of that internal process, and yet the full moon in Aquarius, you and I were talking about this before coming online here, that moon in Aquarius, of course, says, think outside of the box. Give it that time period of thinking totally outside of the box. As we move our way along, and I'm going to move it now along really to about the 2nd and 3rd of August, where the moon lines up with Saturn in Pisces, which is also retrograding. It's now opposing Mercury. Saturn retrograding. Saturn went into Pisces in March of this year. So this is also why I'm talking about the redo thing. Venus is going to take us back to mid-June and look at that stuff. Saturn is going to take us back to March and force us to relook at some of that stuff. And I think there's a lot of people who are struggling a bit with this Saturn in Pisces, because Pisces is the most intuitive sign in the whole entire zodiac. And for those of you who've been going, well, I might be a bit intuitive, Saturn's going, give up on the bit. You are a lot more intuitive than what you are allowing yourself to do. Take notice of when you say, see, I knew that was going to happen. There's a lot to that. And that night of the 2nd of August, even the 3rd of August, pay huge attention to your nighttime dreams. Anybody knows Pisces? They know they love their dream state. They love to have their dream world. And when the moon lines up with Saturn like that, that makes that nighttime visions to be absolutely incredible. Then we come to the next day, the 4th. Now the moon is coming to play with Neptune. The moon with Neptune is saying, so what are your dreams? What do you want to do? What do you want to play at? Pisces is very artistic. For those of you who are into the painting world or the artistic world, this is a great day to pull out your paint. Just allow yourself to just huge that creative side. In astrology, it's creating an inconjunct. So an inconjunct with that retrograding Venus. Inconjuncts are about readjustments. So Venus retrograde says, remember when we were back here, like this would have been earlier part of July, and you kind of told me you weren't really all that creative and you didn't really know what to do with any of that stuff. Let's readjust that mindset. Let's allow that Piscean energy to just have fun. So what if you paint a picture and the cow looks a little sideways in the picture? Who cares? Just allow for that fun to take place. We come to the 5th. Now we've got the moon going to run into Chiron. And Chiron is in conjuncting this Mars and Mercury. Again, we say the inconjuncts create adjustment. We got to adjust the way we're thinking. So if you're kind of thinking with that Chiron and Aries, oh, I can't be the leader. I don't know how to do that. I can't be ahead of the pack. And we have to remember, if you're in the age range of 49, 50, 51 in your own personal chart, you have Chiron somewhere around that 19 degrees Aries. So in astrology, we just talked about the cycles. In astrology, let's step out of this date for a moment and think about our own chart. In astrology, in your personal chart, you have Chiron in your own personal natal chart. If you're around that 49, 50, 51 years of age, you got it, around 19 degrees Aries. It takes that amount of time for Chiron to come all the way around and re-line up. We call it a Chiron return. And I've done readings for the last quite a bit, 2 weeks actually, for a lot of people who are at that age range, and they're dealing with this Chiron return, and they're saying things like, oh, I'm feeling so stuck, or I'm feeling so lost, or I'm feeling, I don't know where to go from here. Well, this is going to be an interesting day for you guys, because with this inconjunct with this Mercury and Mars coming together, lining up with that, pulling down on that Chiron on a little bit of a wide angle, but pulling down on that Chiron, I want you to readjust perhaps your way of thinking. So instead of going, oh, that's going to be way too much work, Mars in Virgo, is that actually true? Is that absolutely, really true? The adjustment. Mercury is saying, readjust that mindset, readjust that way of thinking. And I think this is really going to be very effective for our friends who are Aries, born somewhere around that middle part, the last part of March coming into the early part of April. You're right in the middle of this particular conversation as Chiron is sitting very close to your sun sign there. And all of our mutable signs. So our mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces people born around the 1st of the month, they're going to be really affected with this Mars and Mercury. Again, I say, readjust your mindset and go, is that true? Because as we're in the middle here, we also have Pluto in the bendings. So what's that? Well, when we look in the sky, we've got the south node and the north node at 27 degrees. They oppose each other, obviously, north and south node, but we can draw a line down to Pluto. And so we say Pluto is in the bendings here. That's going to force every one of us to create some type of an ending in our life. Pluto is about the endings to start new beginnings, the new way of beginning of things. Now, make sure with being in the bendings, make sure you give a little bit of that thought in forward. So if I create the ending right now today, what's going to be the fallout of that? That's going to be very important in order to work with that particular bending there with Pluto. Because when Pluto turns around, and we're going to talk about this when we get to October, Pluto will turn around the 10th of October. That's really when the ending will actually begin. But in the bendings, think about it. Think about what type of an ending would actually work. Do you know where that shows up in your chart, Susan?
Oh, yeah. I do. That would be in my 7th house.
And so that's about 7th house is about relationships. It's about partnerships. Not always about love, but quite often it's contractual partnerships, right?
Yeah. Another thing to look forward to.
Well, again, yes, I agree. I hear you. But I think as well, those are times, there are times in our life where we have to look at our own evolution. And if we are evolving and individuals that are around us, friends, husbands, kids, whatever, they're not evolving with us, sometimes it's very hard to stay in a real close connection with them. Doesn't make them bad, doesn't make them wrong, doesn't make them, but when we hang out with friends, and if our friends are not sort of a bit on the same mindset, there's huge gaps in the conversations.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a reworking of something. Like it could be, let's say if it was a business partnership, it can be a reworking of that to make it more realistic and more fit in with what changing goals and stuff. And also with friendships, friendships do change, but some people just, they sort of just want to maybe sweep it right aside and say, okay, well, that friendship is gone, rather than looking at a way to rework it and transform it into something different. So that's, something that also can happen. It doesn't, you don't have to say like a goodbye forever. It's just like, something has to change in the dynamics of how we deal with each other. And, I mean, even just some of, the people in my community that I, had been hanging around with for a number of years, I notice how the changes have happening. New people have moved into the community. There's some people that have moved in, younger people that I really connect to, and, I love them. And so it's continual change. I mean, and that's just something I think that's part of our life that we have to adapt to is continual change. I know that's difficult for some people, but it's if we didn't change in our lives and we just stayed the same forever, and we would just stagnate, and what fun would that be in any kind
And the
of
world wouldn't evolve.
No, not at all. So, you got to kind of take the good with the bad, and hopefully the good outweighs the bad.
And I also think too, like, we've been working the last few years with this Pluto through Capricorn, and the breaking down of the old structures, not structures as in physical building, although that's been some too, but that also has to do with old structures as in past rulings, past laws, past everything that appeared to be solid and in place is breaking down.
Yeah.
And coming into the bendings, I think one of the things, Aries is all about leadership. And I think that in the bendings is also about leadership, whether that's government, whether that's bosses, whether that's rules, whether that's laws, and changing, South Node, changing the relationship to people, places, and things.
But those are all cardinal signs as well, right? So cardinality is all about initiating. So with the Aries, even the Libra and the South Node, it's initiation of new ways of doing things or new ideas in how to change things and how to make them work more for everybody rather than just for a select few.
That's right. And I think that was, the whole thing about that whole 2020 bit, about the shifting and the changing of the old. You think about a world structure, that ain't so easy to get that turned around. That takes years. You have people who stick their feet in, often fixed signs. I'm a fixed sign. Often fixed signs that have a bit of that fixed mindset. We're not that easy to change.
Well, I think I have a good amount of fixed in my chart as well as mutability. So, I maybe am fixed on my morality side of things, and then more open to change on other things. I don't know.
And so one of the other pieces with this I'm also watching is Venus going to trade places with the sun as we move our way along. Let me just run along for a few days and we'll just see how that is. I'll come back to here, but I just want to see the movement. You see how that sun is ruling its way up. So there's the sun and Venus right together on the 13th. I'm just going to roll it a bit further. And now you see that the sun is moving backwards and Venus is moving backwards and the sun is going forward. This is something that is a phenomena that happens every 2 years. And when I wrote my last newsletter, I gave full instructions there on how to look at your own personal chart to see, were you born with a Venus morning star, or were you born with a Venus evening star? And so when we come to the 8th, now we've got the moon moving up to align with Uranus. Now that's in a square with Venus. We don't like squares. Squares create annoyances. Not the end of the world, but we don't particularly like them. They're not of ease. And so this Venus retrograde here, because she's still retrograding until September, right? This Venus retrograde is creating a square to Uranus. I will tell you, there is an unexpected event that comes up around this 8th of August. Probably going to cost you some money. Uranus in Taurus is about finances and security and money and costing of money. The square creates annoyances because Venus is saying, before making that, yep, I'm going to buy that. Yep, that looks like a good idea. Stop. The square says, will I really use it though? Is it something that I actually really do need, or is it just a whim at this particular moment? So don't just jump all over that just at that point in time. Buy it if you certainly want to, but give it some thought, because the square says it may just be a bit of a whim that is just for today. By now, we've got the North Node. Remember, a few days ago, we saw the North Node close enough to that that solar eclipse from April. By the time we get to about the 11th of August, that node is moving out of the ecliptic energy. It's 2 degrees away. There may be still a little bit of a fallout that kind of comes from it. But in reality, the opportunity is really the end of July and the first 10 days or so of August that we will see that whole vibration being the strongest. Now we're at the 12th, and we can see that the Sun and Venus is cozied up to each other. But right on the 13th, Venus sits in the heart of the Sun. And that's a lovely alignment to have Venus sitting in the heart of the Sun. It is still creating that square with Uranus, that unexpectedness, but come back into the heart. You know, I watched an advertisement on TV the other day, and it really struck me. It said something about the fact of, to see the magic, you have to recognize the magic. And I think it's very easy to fall into the line of, oh, the world is really not doing very well, and the government don't know what they're doing, and my boss don't know what they're doing, and the weather is the pit. That's the easy part. That's easy to come up with that. Venus sitting in the heart of the Sun says, allow it to come from your heart. In medical astrology, Leo is all around the heart and the arteries and heartfelt. So rather than getting on that negative track, spend your time with that Venus in the Sun and thinking about sending out that heartfelt vibration there.
Is the Cassimi still exactly the same because Venus is retrograding? Like, is it still exactly the same?
Yeah, it's still considered Cassimi Venus. And all about that love, pushing out that particular love. Now, by the time we get to the 14th, the Sun is moving quickly across the sky. The Sun has made it to 21 degrees Leo. Venus is still moving her way backwards. And then, you know, we're coming up We're coming up to Susan's day when she's going to come up here and start out with the new moon. But on the 15th, before the new moon gets there, it actually has Venus and the moon and the sun all sitting all together. And I'm sure that Susan's going to pick it up from here, from the 16th onward. And the floor is yours, Susan.
Okay, well, we do have the new moon in Leo, and so this is a new cycle, and it's got because it's Leo. Leo is all about being ambitious and optimistic and idealistic and dramatic and self-assured and all of those things. And so it's a focus on creative projects and ventures. Maybe we're looking for a little attention. It's also can be focused on new love and romance and on our own generosity towards others. That Venus retrograde might bring in a little bit of unconventionality and different approaches to romance and love that we might have thought we wanted before, or a totally different perspective on what we value and what brings us happiness. So this new moon also creates a square aspect to Uranus at 23 degrees. Yeah, the moon's not quite up to 23 degrees, but it is in the new moon. And so this aspect can bring in a lot of change along with the new beginnings associated with the new moon. We don't have to remain stuck in all of our old fixed ways of doing things. We have the opportunity to welcome in new and exciting ways of being creative or of attracting new love into our lives or new people. It ties nicely with that, once again, the potential unconventionality of Venus retrograde in Leo. So this new moon with the Uranus energy can give us a new perspective on maybe an old issue. And this will have a strong effect on people that have the fixed signs of Leo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Taurus that are like between 20 and 26 degrees, and the houses where those signs are located. So if you know where you're at with your houses, then you can see what particular area of your life this might be affecting. From the 16th to the 17th, the moon quickly goes into Virgo, and it sets up an opposition to Saturn in Pisces. So cool-headed Virgo is kind of a bit, I think, at odds with that untouchable mental and emotional energy of Pisces. Like, it's kind of like, oh my God, what do we do now? Like, they can tell, that Virgo is so focused on just, doing things that are more practical, things that you can put your hands onto, and Saturn in Pisces, there's nothing physical about it. So it's brings in that emotional energy of what am I going to do now, and what should I be thinking or feeling. Saturday and Sunday, the 19th and the 20th, if we move along to the 19th and 20th, the moon goes into Libra for the weekend, but we have the sun in Leo is trining the North Node in Aries. And that also means that it's sextiling the South Node in Libra. So as the North Node has just moved in Aries, so we might be kind of struggling to find what our true purpose now is, that the North Node has gone into Aries, and we have support from the sun, and the sun is our life force. I mean, it's how we shine. So, and then we have the sextile with the South Node reminding us that we need others in our lives to create that balance that we need for our own personal happiness. I mean, some people really feel that, they can do it kind of all on their own, but you do need to bring other people in to just balance out things in lives and make everything feel better. On the 21st, Monday the 21st, we have the retrograding Venus squares Jupiter and Taurus. And so this is actually a good transit for having fun, I think, and feeling happy and optimistic and generous and friendly. But Jupiter and Taurus also reminds us that there are still things that we need to attend to with our financial matters, or maybe with more serious things that we are responsible for. Jupiter's expansiveness may have us, our sweet tooth may suddenly be unsatisfied, or we may find that we're drinking a lot or shopping in excess. So it's moderation might be difficult to choose when we're in this kind of festive mood that's been created by Jupiter and Venus. And so it's kind of important to find a sense of balance here as well. On Tuesday, the 22nd, Mars in Virgo is in opposition to Neptune and Pisces. So here we are back again with that, Virgo, Neptune, not quite know what to do. So that's opposition. It makes it kind of difficult to focus on the tasks that we want to, that we, have at hand, and we might be feeling low energy and just not, kind of like we're stuck and we can't move forward with things. So we need to kind of take the time to recharge a bit before we move forward. The moon in Scorpio is also at the same time is also making things a bit more intense with that opposition between Mars and Neptune.
But I
Mars,
think, sorry, I think
go
that,
ahead, no.
yeah, I think that Mars might be able to get a little bit of help from Pluto. Because
Yes.
Mars is trining Pluto. Both of them are in Earth, so they're at least trining.
Yes, yeah.
And at least Pluto is sextiling Neptune.
Yeah.
So they might be able to get a little help from that Pluto.
Yeah, I have Mars and Virgo is starting his approaching trine to Pluto and Capricorn. So that those are two of our power planets that support each other. And yeah, so there is a good chance there to, to work on any issues that have come up. I mean, Mars wants to get things done, and Pluto wants to get to the core problem of what it is that needs to be fixed or looked at or reworked or whatever. So there is a good opportunity there for the two of them to work together and to find a solution. And this actually becomes exact on the Thursday, the 24th. But before that, on Wednesday, the 23rd, we have the sun going into the earthy sign of Virgo. And so our focus now is on getting, to some of the tasks and the chores that we maybe have been putting off over the summer while we've been on vacation and all of that. And so there's lots of organizing that might be wanting to take place. And it's also a time, I feel, when we need to be taking care of our health after being maybe more indulgent than we usually are over the months of the summer. For many people, the tasks that they have to do involve getting their children all their school supplies ready and everything else that entails, and getting their children ready for school in September. Many of us are winding down from our summer vacations or just little road trips, whatever we've been doing, and we're trying to get back on track with our work. And also, it's happy birthday to our Virgo friends. On the 24th, the next day, we have Mercury in Virgo. He starts his third retrograde of 2023, which lasts until September the 15th. So we have to remember that Mercury rules Virgo as well as Gemini, but he's got a different mindset, a different frame of mind. So this retrograde might have us checking in on our own personal health and have us looking at finding better ways of taking care of ourselves and our stress levels. Virgo is a sign that strives for perfection, which can be very stressful. And especially after a couple months of being, having fun and being frivolous, we now all of a sudden we think, oh my God, we got all these things to do. How are we going to do them all and get them done? And so that can create a lot of stress on us. So we need to find ways that we can manage our stress and avoid taking on too much, and also avoid trying to find perfection in everything, because Virgos tend to not only they want to do the tasks, they want it done perfectly. So and that can be very stressful for people that have a lot of that planets in Virgo, or even Virgo people. They just really need to take the time to maybe meditate or relax or do something to ease the stress in their lives. The moon after this moves into Sag for a few days, so that kind of leaves behind the emotional intensity we had with the past few days with Scorpio, and so we can breathe maybe a little more easier. On Friday, the 25th, the Sun in Virgo is opposing Saturn in Pisces. So this is kind of like we have to work on our own personal restrictions and limitations and move away from that striving for perfection. We need to try to maybe be more, embrace more the fluidity of Saturn in Pisces energy. And even looking into our own spirituality will lessen the need that we feel that we have to always be in control of everything that we do, and that it all has to be done with such high standards. Saturn would have us leaning more into our mental abilities and knowing intuitively what is the right course of action or inaction. You know, a lot of times we call it intuition, but it's also our gut feeling. And a lot of times, you know, you have gut feelings about things and you ignore them. And we should be, all of us, paying more attention to what, you know, what we call our gut feeling, which is probably actually our intuition. And, you know, Saturn in Pisces is going to bring a lot of that to us over the next couple of years. And I think it's important that we all sort of look into it or lean into it and try to find where our comfort zone is with that. Yeah. On the 27th, Mars moves into Libra. So Mars and Libra, this brings our, you know, Mars's aggression and action and our energy. And so it brings all of that into our personal relationships with others. It may bring new people into our lives. We may be more focused on finding that balance that is needed to maintain just you know, our business and personal relationships. And Libra might try and tame Mars a little bit into being more considerate of others and kinder, instead of, you know, using, you know, just brute force to go ahead and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. You know, it's Libra is all about finding balance. So,
and Mars is in its fall in Libra. It does not like being in Libra.
well, you know, there's a reason maybe why he's in his fall there, but I think it's just because he has to learn to be a little gentler. And so, yeah, it's like just tone down on the aggression and be a little more gentle, and you might find that you actually like it.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, really. And then on the 28th, we start off the week with the moon in Aquarius, and Uranus starts his retrograde cycle in Taurus. So, you know, Uranus and Aquarius are very closely related. So our need for instant change and unexpected events might slow down a little bit more. And we have time to revisit all of that has happened since January, when Uranus went into forward motion from his previous retrograde. So there's been a lot that's gone on since January, and we might want to just stop and look at that. Uranus will be in his retrograde cycle until January of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, you know, and so now that brings us, we have, you know, all of our outer planets are in retrograde, our Pluto, our Saturn, our Neptune, Uranus. So our big outer planets are in retrograde. We also have Venus in retrograde and Mercury in retrograde. So there's a lot of opportunity here to go back and look things over and, you know, revisit things and think about, you know, what's happened and how we want to move forward with things. And that jumps us right into the full moon in Pisces on Wednesday, the 30th. So this is our second full moon in August. Every time we have two full moons in 1 month, it's called a blue moon.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, once upon a blue moon. This is also a super moon. And a supermoon simply means that the moon's orbit is at its closest point to Earth, and therefore it appears brighter and larger, especially when it's rising up over the horizon. It's gigantic looking.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this full moon in Pisces, this brings in a lot of emotional and intuitive energy and creative energy, and it's a quieter full moon energy than what the Aquarius one would have been at the beginning of the month. It's mental, but it's mental in a different way than the Aquarius full moon would have been. We may want to spend some time reflecting and being more introspective. Because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, this full moon could be a time even of major endings for us. And we might have a deeper connection to our subconscious and our intuition, our compassion, our empathy, and our psychic abilities, all of those things that we associated with Pisces. It's also, a really great time for the people that are into any kind of the arts, like dance and music and writing and any of that. I mean, those people can become highly creative at this time.
And meditation.
And meditation. So it's also a culmination of the new moon in Pisces that started back in February, I think, the end of February, around the 20th. And so if we look back to last February and what we hope to initiate at that time, we can see if we've accomplished all that we've wanted to. I just have to plug in here. Accomplish all that we've wanted to do since then. And I don't know. That kind of brings me to the end of my little spiel. Holly?
Yeah, so I think, it's certainly, as you and I both talked about there before coming on, it certainly is not as heavy as the month of July.
It's a lot more introspective, I think, than, once we get more into the latter part of August and, away from the frenzy of summer, even though summer goes on for, until September, but it's still, I think people start to slow down a bit more and get back to the tasks at hand. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway.
Well, thank you everyone for watching with us. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Press the like button. We look forward to seeing you again next month. Take care.
You too. Thanks. Bye.